You'll see in the
whoa. Okay, let's wait a couple more minutes.
Yep, okay.
Oh, hey, hi.
Hey, Blasphemers, hang tight. We have Eric here, our guest, and we're about to start the show right now. Hey, Blasphemers, welcome to Simple Blasphemy, where we have the best times with the worst topics.
We're three friends that discuss everything and nothing, from wacky headlines to games and trivia. All subjects bizarre and risque are on the table.
Our weekly guests range from friends, musicians, and artists to professionals in a variety of industries.
We go live on Facebook and YouTube every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Want to support the show? Join our Patreon. You can find it and more at www.simpleblasphemy.com.
So grab a drink and join in!
It's too late now. This is Simple Blasphemy.
All right. Woo! Welcome to the Simple Blasphemy podcast, all you blasphemers out there. My name is Zach Ward, and I have here with me always Andy.
I miss touching people. Doesn't everybody miss touching people? Zach Green, do you miss touching people as much as I do?
Oh.
Hug.
Mr. Zach, the Green Machine.
I don't. I'm sorry. Well, thank you for asking.
Oh, that's good. All the info on our show can be found at simpleblasphemy.com. And if you click that like, share, subscribe button, you'll receive 5 years of good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not. We actually pay for that. So
the Tooth Fairy will come back and grab whatever teeth you have left.
Yeah. Even that bothersome loose one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the bonded one.
Everything except the appliances.
All right.
Molars walking around.
So we are lucky enough to have our special guest here today is Eric. Eric is a staple here in this community, in this Northwest Ohio.
Multi-instrumentalist, multi-talented supporter of many
Heartbeat of
things.
America.
He is the heartbeat.
It's a kind way to say that everyone's super over it and sick of seeing me. Is that what it is?
A little bit.
Also pretty humble, folks. Pretty humble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Handsome.
Handsome, yeah.
How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm good, man. Got back from smashing some delicious Thai food, getting ready for the big show today. And I'm a little bit tired because we got a puppy. And the puppy is bananas and eats everything. And it just ate a bunch of cat food and had the squirts all over the place. And it wakes me up every 3 hours.
It sounds like Zach Green.
She's really cute. So, yeah, it's very similar.
Green's talked to this often. He doesn't have a gallbladder. So
everything's juice.
Which is, I have two, so it works out.
Two gallbladders?
Is that where it went?
Two little green peas.
He's creating fucking cast iron bricks.
Oh, laying some brick brown.
Every time you shit, go out in the backyard. I want a new garage.
All right, before we really dive into Eric's extraordinary story that you can't wait to hear, we want to get to know him better. So we are going to throw 4 questions your way. Eric, so here you go. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Well, is this a superpower that you can turn on and off?
Sure.
How about let's go with invisibility?
Okay.
Any particularly like creepy reason?
Yeah, you can just do kinky, weird stuff. You can do kind of creepy stuff. Creep around, check stuff out, scare people.
Go to all of your enemies and sneak up behind them and say, "I told you I'd find you."
Yeah.
Or then just turn it back on and be like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." Slash, I did because I heard you say that when I was right over there, invisible.
Okay, so I do have one invisible question then. When you die, are you able to continue in the invisibility realm, or do you actually pass away? That's
motherfucker passes away in the middle of Fifth Avenue, tripping people with his corpse.
So if you're invisible and you die, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're dead, do you still get to continue the invisibility and just not be able to come back?
I would think that the power would stop.
Okay.
So you would die, and then you'd be like, "Wow, I didn't know there was a dude there. There's a guy."
Okay. Good enough.
Okay.
What age do you consider old?
I'm going to say 50, of which I passed.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, 50. That's a low number.
Do you think it is? I feel like that's old. Like when I was a little kid, I felt like people who were 50, I'm like, what the? Get out of here, Gramps.
Well, music-wise, yeah. I mean, when you're a musician, a lot of us have that kind of like, holy shit, I couldn't imagine being 40.
I don't know, man. Take a listen to that new AC/DC album and tell me that they're old, because that sounds pretty awesome.
It is good. But like I think about like I'm older than my grandpa was when I was born. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
that's like
It's weird how people relate what they feel as being old.
I'm scared.
What do you think is old? Like 100? I mean, that's like
I mean, like at least
I thought 14.
80.
I thought 14 was old.
Oh,
I remember.
wow.
I mean,
Back
that's
in the
old
day,
for you
I
to
remember.
date.
I remember something. There was supposed to be some family function that happened years ahead of time that we're getting ready for, like some type of graduation party or something. And my mom's like, "Yeah, you're gonna be 14 when Uncle Jerry graduates, college or whatever." I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna be so fucking old. I can't even comprehend that."
Dig the grave
I mean,
now,
and
Mom.
now look at me. I'm like fucking 47, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, am I still here?
True story. All right, next question, Eric. What terrible movie do you love?
oh God, that's an endless, boundless font of shitty movies that I could tell you about. But
First comes
how
to
about
mind?
Top Secret? That pops off the top of my head right there.
Val Kilmer. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Man, that's great. How silly can you get?
It's the movies like that and like Airplane and Naked Gun that they're all bad,
Yeah.
but they're bad in like a dad joke kind of way,
Like it's on purpose bad. You mean
It's
like
on
you're talking
purpose
more
bad.
like,
deliberately.
but then
bad.
like, yeah, I don't know. Because then people are like, oh, like that movie was bad. But some like certain other movies people think are bad. Other people are like, that's the greatest masterpiece
Dead
ever.
Alive. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Or
that.
like Reefer Madness or whatever, like it's terrible. Like, or is it?
Dude, where's my car? All right.
Cool World.
See, I just thought that was terrible. Is that Val Kilmer? No, that was Brad Pitt.
Cool World.
Yeah, who was that? It was one of those guys.
It was Brad
Yeah.
Pitt.
Was it Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
It was one. Was that one of those kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
No, it was a
animated cameras?
slash between reality and cartoon world.
Yeah, they're like,
I think it was like 12 or 13 when that came out, and I was still too young to see that movie.
All right. Last question.
Yep. All right.
What is the worst job you've ever had?
well, we just talked about razzmatazz. And that job sucked. The worst job I ever had was I've had a lot of terrible jobs. I mean, and I'm not kidding when I tell you this. In my life, I've probably had 60 jobs. I bet I've had 60 jobs. Working for like Manpower, where you have to go in and like clean out disgusting stuff, and they pay you like $11 an hour or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think my first and worst job was I was a caddy at a golf course here in town.
Golf
And
course
I was-
jobs suck.
I was like 13, and I didn't know shit about golf, and and I was kind of like a little kid, kind of like whatever. And maybe the fourth hole, after I got yelled at a bunch, I got zapped with a golf ball in the leg by some dude like way far away. It was like I heard it like, and it hit me right in the leg, and I collapsed and dropped the guy's clubs, and I just walked off.
Wow.
It sucked, and that was like, and even now, like I still golf sometimes, and I never forget that.
Kid, where are you limping off to?
Yeah, that's good. I'm back with my clubs, you punk.
Especially the sound.
Yeah.
I paid you for 6 hours.
Yeah, and these kids, and it was like for real. When I saw Caddyshack, I'm like, that's true, because like they're like, yeah.
One of my first jobs, I caddied at Belmont in Perrysburg. So that's where I grew up, and I rode my bike. It took me like 35 minutes even to get there. And, you know, as many as these guys know, I am not a sports person whatsoever. And, I mean, I'll never forget the first time someone says, "What are you thinking? Like 4-iron?" They're like, "Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Absolutely.
4.5, whatever it takes.
Well, we're at the tee.
Sand wedge."
If you can tell the bullshit, you're golden.
We're on the green, sir. Yeah, that being a caddy is a shitty job unless you're like some kind of status climber. Like, I'm going to meet all these famous people and whatever. It's like you just get shit on as a caddy.
I worked at a golf course, but I didn't work as a caddy. I was the ball boy that was driving the tractor.
Yeah, I bet you were.
Yeah, it was.
The guy that everyone shot at.
But the shitty part is there was a hole or two in the grate of the ball cart. Yes,
I get this. I see where this is going.
It keeps getting better, doesn't it?
Endless as well.
The gape.
They called him. He was the polishing boy.
Mind the gape.
Mind the game.
Is that an England thing or?
Yes, yeah, indeed.
I feel like you just said something disgusting and filthy in England.
And then that's where the story ends, doesn't it?
Yes, that's it.
So like
Made a lot of money. That's
unfulfilled.
Unfulfilled.
Well,
No, to follow it up, a ball did get shot through the small hole in the grate and bounce around on the inside of the cage once.
such is life.
Yes.
We like to do our quick shout out segment right before we get to Eric. So we want to give a shout out to we have the stats for the top 5 countries for just the audio only. And it also helps remind us that when we're doing these interviews that there are only audio only people. So once again, coming in at number 1, it's almost 80% is India. Woo! This is like 3 months in a row. I did learn
that. That's awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it, guys. Number 2, United States, Germany, Canada, and Belgium crept into the number 5 spot. And with that, we have Tanner Wirtz with Tanner Wirtz's shout out.
What's up, guys? Tanner Wirtz here. I want to give a shout out to people who don't wear masks because it makes me feel better, because some of you are ugly as fuck, and it makes me feel a little bit better about my personal appearance.
Nice
All right.
smile.
Okey
Nice
dokey.
smile.
Yep. There you go.
Okie dokie. So,
All right.
how do you want to start this there, Captain?
Other captain?
Other Captain?
Well, let's get young.
Shall we?
Let's go back to your formative days. You were on tour with a couple of bands, the Circle Jerks and the Necros. Tell us a little bit more about that.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
So when I was a little kid, I was really into punk rock, and I got into it. I was like, my dad got me into ska music, and then ska kind of turned into somebody played me like a Black Flag record, and I kind of put ska to the side for a while. But and like I would do shit like we would listen to the college radio station, and the guy the DJ would be like, "Hey, I'm going to go see Black Flag tonight. Anybody want to ride?" We're like, "Sure." So we'd call the guy, sneak out of our house, go meet up with some dude that we'd never met, and drive to Detroit and never tell our parents until now.
Hang on a second. I got to get this, guys. My phone's ringing off the hook.
Somebody told me that Andy from the Necros worked at a record store in town here called Special Records. And I was like, oh shit, I got to go talk to this dude. They're my favorite band. I got to go find out. So I went to Special Records, and you can't miss Andy. He's a wall. He's a giant human wall. And he was behind the counter.
Uh-oh. Hold on.
No, please.
Stand by.
Hold on, Eric. You just froze just a little bit. You were standing behind the counter was the last. All right.
Yeah, I'm here. You here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's
I
back.
see me.
He's back. Oh, my God.
Live TV, folks.
This
Live.
is
see you
2020. This is 2020.
We can see it's just a little.
Choppy.
Yeah.
So anyway, Yeah. So I pulled up my pants. I said, "Keep the change," and I left.
Whoa! Oh shit! I did not see that
good
coming.
use of time. Good use of time. Thank you.
I'll be here all evening.
So Andy worked at the record store. And I was like, "Hey, I heard these guys are real jerks," and I held up like a Necros record, and he was like, "Oh, you're really funny. Come hang out with us, whatever." So I went and met all of them in like a day, and then within like a week, they're like, "Hey, we need a roadie to go to Chicago. You want to go?" I'm like, "Sure." So I went to Chicago, and they were playing with like Sonic Youth or something at some giant place, and then they were like, "Hey, we're going to New York to play with Red Cross or whatever. You want to go?" I'm like, "Yes." So I just kept hanging out with them more and more, and then they're like, "Hey, we're going to tour with the Circle Jerks. You want to go?" I'm like, "Well, I have to like not go to high school." Because I was only in like junior, and my mom was like, "You better go, dude. Go and just take summer school."
Wow.
So I blew off my junior year of high school and went on tour with the Necros and the Jerks, and went from Detroit to California and back, and that was awesome, hilarious. Like hanging out with
really
Keith
awesome
Morris
that your
every
mom-
day was.
Seriously.
Yeah, it was cool. Like she was always and is super like supportive and like, just go. You're never going to get this chance again. That's dumb. Just go. And then I came back and did summer school, which trying to get a kid who's like 15 or 16 to worry about summer school after you just got home touring with the fucking Necros and the Circle Jerks was a little bit like, because I was like every day when you hang out with the Jerks, it's like some new thing because they're like royalty, and the Necros too. So like, like we were in Indiana, I think it was Indiana somewhere, and they were filming 8 Men Out, and like Charlie Sheen and all those cats came to one of the shows and hung out all day. And the next day, like Henry Rollins shows up to 3 gigs and whatever. And, I'm like this little kid. I'm not even old enough to get into the bars that we were playing. Like, so they would, and I didn't look like I didn't fake it well. I was like a little baby faced kid. And, and so we just cruised around, and we went a lot of the gigs we thought were going to be terrible. We'd just go in, and if it was going to suck, we just didn't go in. And because, like talking about old and age, like I was little, like Keith Morris was probably in his 30s then.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so to me, he was like the old dude, or almost 30 at least. And every day they would hang out and tell me crazy stories about hanging out with X or the Gun Club or whatever. Just, they're all super cool guys.
I got a question for you on that, though.
They went to Europe and came back we took a break, and they bought me like a pair of Doc Martens, which I kept wore for like ever.
Well, at that point, you're touring around, you're kind of getting an eagle eye view of touring music at that time, right? Of some pretty famous people, or at least growing fame, and a punk rock thing that's really, really starting to boom. Did you at that point like think that this is something that you wanted to do? Did that, or
yeah, well, for sure, because the Necros are like, to me, they're still the best live band I've ever seen, and I watched them every night. So, and they, at that point they had like long hair, and like they were like kind of against the grain of what was happening in hardcore. So they were like super kind of rock, and they were into like Aerosmith and Deep Purple and stuff. They didn't give a shit about like the new Minor Threat record or whatever anymore. So, I mean, they were still fast and played punk rock, but as soon as I saw them play the first time on that tour, I was like, this is what I want to do. So I came back and pretty much started a band, and then I was the drummer, and a bunch of guys from Toledo that you probably have met or know or in the band. And then it was called Gone in 60 Seconds. And basically we were just kind of like existed to open for the Necros in Detroit. That was like our whole whole thing. We were always known as like the Necros roadie band. And so we'd go to tracks or, St. Andrews or whatever and open for them. And we played a lot of other shows too.
Are you talking about tracks that was off of Gratiot just south of 7 Mile?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember that fucking place, man.
So many rad shows. I saw so many incredible shows.
What a fucking place.
Scary as shit to go there. Now it's super mellow, but like Andy and I used to drive up there, and Andy, I told you he's a wall. He's huge. And we'd cruise up in his he had this big LTD convertible, and we'd drive up there in the summer, and he'd put his Marshall on the back, We both had, we're pretty big guys with long hair. We'd just drive up, crash it right to the club, and
Oh yeah.
it was terrifying as fuck. But we're like, what are we gonna do? I mean, we
Yeah,
don't have.
'cause there was a long drive from the moment that you could get off the highway, like 75, up to tracks. There was
Yes.
a long period of
Yeah.
road, and I can see you doing that. Yeah.
and then also like tracks itself, like the load in is terrifying. It's like the way St. Andrews Hall too. Like when we used to play St. Andrews, they would be like, you don't load out the back, like you don't. And we're like, but the stage is here and our car is there. Like we just go out the back. They're like, don't. And if you did, you were going to get robbed. I mean, it was just that was it. And same thing with tracks. It was they're like, you have a guitar that's worth $50. Give it to me.
Yeah.
So we did all that, and then I was the drummer, and then our singer quit, and they were like, well, now you just have to be the singer. So I was the singer, and then we played a ton of shows. We like opened for Soundgarden at St. Andrews when they were on tour with they're on tour with somebody huge like Van Halen or whatever. And the show got canceled that they were playing, so they did a quick surprise show at the hall, and we opened for that.
Wow.
We played with Alice in Chains at the Roxanne's over here on Burn.
Yeah, Burn.
So we did like a bunch of gigs, mainly because we knew a bunch of people because of the Necros. So like at that time, Big Chief was starting, and they were on Sub Pop, and so of course every Sub Pop band was like, "Oh, you guys are friends with Big Chief? Cool, then great, play with us." Because we don't want some local band we don't know. We'd rather have a friends band play. So, I mean, we really didn't ever earn our stripes right away. We didn't tour a lot or anything, but we kind of had a good headlock on the local thing for a while.
That's good.
And then we kind of fizzled out. Andy from the Necros joined the band later, and that's when things really took off. We went to New York and played a lot and played Detroit all the time.
Do the CBGBs thing then. You had to have.
Yes, the first time I played CBs though was with Five Horse Johnson, not with that band. We played the Pyramid. We played there's a Beowulf, this place underground, this weird little place. We played a lot of those kind of gigs. A lot of gigs in Chicago because friends of ours called Rights of the Accused kind of ran that show over there in Chicago. So they were friends like Naked Ray Gun and all those dudes. And they're also like best friends with Ministry. Yeah. So like they kind of got Ministry. Rise of the Accused were this band that they kind of dressed like the Beastie Boys, but they sounded like Kiss playing hardcore.
Okay.
And they were like, so the Ministry guys like found them, and that's like Mike O'Connell's in the big Ministry video with the flashing, blinking, the one from the big first hit. The that one. Mike is the guy dancing. The singer of that is the guy dancing in that video. But so we'd go to Chicago and play with them all the time, and it was fun. We just basically from one little friend group to another.
Hold on one second here. We have a lot of musicians that do, watch this show. What is like a few things that you got to learn quickly that ended up helping the success or the ability to maybe be in the right place at the right time or be able to travel to New York and Chicago? What were some of those things that you learned as a roadie that you got to like excel way faster than anyone in town?
I think the thing about the Necros and why they were really like loved is that they're very like down to earth, cool people, but they're also kind of like a little bit larger than life, like people, like they're kind of rock stars without being assholes.
Right.
So like, I found that like people were always surprised when they would approach them and they would be really cool and super nice and like friendly. And they'd be like, "Oh, wow, that's surprising. We thought you'd be like brooding like Henry or, kind of like gruff like John Brannon." But in reality, they were just super fun, cool guys. And I found that gets you about as far as you can go, is to be really as cool and nice and giving, like all the guys that I met, like Chris Gates and from the Big Boys and like, all the guys in Minor Threat and all those cats, they're all very nice, like cool, fun. And if you just are cool enough and mellow enough and don't be a dick, you're probably going to get the call to come play, And
we get that. Even we don't really go into the whole reverend thing too often here, but we've met some super huge people. Even like Andy pointed out, he saw Boris from Gogo Bordello out in LA, and we get to meet all these guys. Whether it be Billy Corgan or Robin from Nails, or these people that we work with, and the common thing is you have to be nice. I mean, if you're an asshole, you will never make it. Rarely will it happen.
You have to be a very talented asshole that can do everything by himself,
especially today,
or herself, or themselves, whatever. But remember when we were in Nashville a few years ago, they described it as the hang. You don't have. You can be a serviceable musician, but if you're a good hang, you're going to get a leg up on everybody else.
Oh yeah,
and that's what you were describing, is just being a cool person and not fanboying, or I don't know. Don't be psycho.
Exactly. Like, don't be a dick, and you'll probably. And the other thing that that really has served me well has been, if you get on stage, rock the fuck out. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm not trying to sound like make it simplistic. I just mean, you really have to. There's an art to doing it, and you guys all understand. I've seen all of you guys play at one point, and it's like you get it. It's like.
Well, I noticed you take, when you're harping, when you have the harp in your hand, you drape that cord like Rocky Balboa draped that American flag across his back, right?
Yeah.
And there's I'm not actually trying to be funny. I'm just trying to describe it, but you do command the stage, and you give that's the thing, especially with music, it's like this energy transfer for people that might not be able to play or have a band or have that type of organization, but you get to transfer this energy back and forth, and that's what people come. At least back in the day.
Back a long time ago, people
let me tell you something. We had a street team.
Put your finger in each other's buttholes and walk around like a caterpillar.
We ain't got no street team.
Wow.
And we had a staple gun, and we would take the staple gun, and we would take the paper, and we would staple it to the so what you're saying though, it you can tell that it holds true for a lot. Like, I saw Bowie several years ago at the Palace, and it was his birthday, and that dude, and I watched your Reeves Gabrel's interview. I mean, he's the same kind of guy. He's like that guy. He's like that dude. He's just like cool, Yeah. And it's like I could hang out with him or the guys in Clutch or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're all that guy. But when I saw Bowie, he took this entire arena. He took the Palace of Auburn Hills and shrunk it down into I might as well have seen him at Frankie's. And it just felt so I felt so intimate and so yeah, this dude is talking to me, or at least me and that guy, and he brought this in, and it's hard to explain that. And it has a lot to do with the fact that it's Bowie. So you're like, whoa, I'm hung on his every word, but also he has the goods to back it up. So he's going to be cool and then blow your face off for a while and then bring it back and be cool. And then go, all right, here's one more. This was called, whatever, changes,
You let the music do all the posturing.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the person doing the posturing. You can just let your artistry speak.
Yeah, and that's really the two things that I learned from punk rock in general, but especially the Necros, because those guys are the masters of that, of don't be a dick and just wail, rip it, make everyone feel as if they're super embarrassed to even bother bringing their gear, to the gig that night. And whether you do blow their faces off or not, you always feel better that you put it out that much every time you play. So, and sometimes it's not the kind of music we play lends yourself to that. If we were an acoustic duo, it wouldn't be quite as, although I have seen Tenacious D and they rip it like that, but for the most part, yeah. So anyway, that was my two things that I learned.
How about this? This goes by too fast. Zach Green always complains that this show's over before it starts almost, but
oh no, here we go.
We do have to dive into Five Horse Johnson a little bit, right?
Yes, we do.
So your one band that you got to have these opportunities with fizzled. How did the Five Horse thing come about then?
So it all started because I broke my foot. I was walking through a 7-Eleven parking lot and I stepped in a pothole and I broke my foot, like this bone of my foot.
Oh,
You just needed a leg up or what?
a little different than a pop top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I stepped in the pothole, broke my foot, and I had a cast in my foot, and it wasn't a walking boot or whatever. This is like just pre-walking boots. I had a giant cast.
So it wasn't like cruising back home and there's booze in the blender.
Right, exactly.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
But it's that frozen concoction that helped me hang on.
Yep.
And so my dad was like, "Well, my dad was a harmonica player. He's like, since you're stuck, here is a bunch of blues CDs with the keys to the songs written in pencil next to each song.
Wow.
And here's a bunch of harmonicas that fit those songs. And while you're sitting there on your ass, go ahead and play." So
now, were they the harmonica key or the key of the song?
Like, so he would give me, like, let's say it was like Mannish Boys in A, let's say. Yeah. He would give me the correct harmonica for that.
Gotcha.
Like to play an A. So he'd give me like a D harp, you know. And then so I just sat around and learned how to play harp. And then at the same time, Brad, our guitar player, was out visiting his old man in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And he had started listening to like Howlin' Wolf, of course. But I mean, like, started listening to like Junior Kimbrough and Arnold Burnside and that kind of thing. And my dad and I were doing the same thing back here at home. We were listening to the same stuff. So Brad came home from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he's like, "Hey, I'm home, man. What have you been doing?" And I'm like, "I've been playing harp. I've been listening to blues." He's like, "I've been playing slide guitar and listening to blues. Let's jam." So we went to his mom's basement and we wrote like 4 songs. We had our drummer playing bongos because we didn't have a drummer. And then Ed Szymborski put out our first record within 6 months of our existence. So that was, and I was like, I had learned a lot from the Necros and from my last band that I was like, we have to get a record. We have to play a lot. Here's the things we have to do. We can't just
get out of
and
town.
Brad's kind of like, "Come on, man, it'll work out." I'm like, "No, let's go now." So I was sort of like pushing it all the time to be like, we got to get a record. We got to play this show. We got to do this. And that's when we ran into Ed and he put it out. And that record carried us quite a while. And then we went on from there to that Detroit label. So, but that was pretty much the way it went. Once we started playing, we got lots of gigs opening for tons of people. Like we opened for every band you can imagine that was playing, from like Southern Culture on the Skids or like weird bands. Like we played with Jesus Lizard a lot. But then we would play with like Johnny Winter, or we played with like Luther Allison when he played here. And then at the same time, my dad was throwing down with all these blues guys because he just met these cats. So like we started hanging out with like Arnold Burnside and Junior Kimbrough. Like we drove down to the Delta and hung out with them.
Wow.
My dad's awesome. 50th birthday. He's like, "I'm driving down to the Delta. Let's go." So we all drove down there and we like knocked on their doors. Like, I'm like, "Hi, my name's Eric. I talked to you on the phone. Come on in, and
welcome like family.
I heard your band, and I heard your CD that you had there from Toledo, And so we started getting gigs with those guys, and that
the one thing that's
that
nice
whole
about
scene really spun off a lot of like stuff.
Yeah, the one thing that's nice about Five Horse Johnson is that you guys can actually kind of like fit into a couple different genres too. I mean, you guys could easily open up for Fu Manchu with the stoner rock thing. You know what I mean? I'd never really thought of it as kind of blues, to be honest with you. I came across Five Horse Johnson when I was washing dishes at a place in Perrysburg that Brad used to come up and called Stevens. That Brad used to come up and hang up, back in like '92 or something. And I never considered it really blues. It was like it's just his own thing.
Yeah. It sounded like Toledo. That's what anybody that
Yeah.
I would talk to back then was like, oh yeah, 5 horsepower. That's what Toledo sounds like. It's like,
Lazy American workers.
Yeah,
Kind of whatever thing.
Well, we were kind of like accepted by all the cool guy stoner people, because like the Caius guys kind of took a liking to us, so like they started to big mouth us a little bit, and then we started touring a lot. And once we got over to Europe and started playing all these big stoner festivals, because I mean, really, it's like if you're listening, all stoner people, they just wanted to hear Black Sabbath,
Right.
and once they realized that like the Wizard has a harmonica in it, oh, we love your band because it has harmonica, and also like everyone drinks from the same well, musically, like everyone loves Sabbath and Deep Purple and like all those crazy old Aerosmith records and all those Muddy Waters records. Everybody likes those. No one doesn't like those. And so really we just kind of got
Deep
over on them a little bit.
Yeah.
So
what? Okay, it really begs the question: how did you guys land? How did your band land these festivals? Like, if everybody in town had this, whatever it is, I mean, we'd all be out in different festivals across Europe and everything else. How did you land that?
So we signed to Small Stone Records right after we did our record with Ed Szymborski here in Toledo.
Mhm.
And we started playing, and we used to get, like, because Big Chief were on Sub Pop. They were friends of ours, they're like our best friends, and they were on Sub Pop, so they were like touring all over the place already. And that was our thing, is we really want to go to Europe, but we're like this little Toledo band, trying to do our thing and make this weird blues stuff. And one promoter guy in Europe, like we contacted a lot of people, and they'd be like, oh, thanks, whatever. And this one crazy Dutch guy, this guy named Hank, and he's like a crazy dude, like piercings all over and super, like if you saw him, you'd think he was like, gonna on the way to like a bondage / discharge concert, and he was like, I really like your band. Can you send me some promo CDs? And our label was like, honestly, we don't have the money to send CDs, because then we had to send the compact discs, and it would cost. He only had a certain amount to sell.
You couldn't just upload something.
Hit dial up.
You couldn't go find us on whatever. So
we done in 4.5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So the guy. So what he did was he said, okay, well, I'll take care of this. So he called all of his clubs, his venues that he was booking, and he played the CD that he had over the phone for them. And he said, here's this band, I want to bring them over. And at the time, most of Europe was like, the governments paid for all the arts. So if a club lost their ass on a show, they didn't care. If they liked the band and they brought the band over, the government was going to pay for the ticket. So they didn't really care if the show flopped. So what that allowed you to do was like build a thing. You could like build a whole, go once, tear it down, rip a tour of like, 5 venues, as long as you slayed, and they want you to come back, and they tell friends, then more people came.
The government's
6 months
still
later,
they're gonna get you over there.
Yeah. And so we were able to build a following.
Goddamn socialism.
Yes. Thank you for it. Come on, Bernie, get me back on the road. But so basically, like, we built this huge following in like 2 years, and we stayed in mainly in Belgium, Holland. Some, like, we'd go to like London, and then we went down to Spain, and for some reason Spain are crazy rockers, and so they loved us there. So that was our bread and butter for a couple of years.
So hey, Eric, really quickly, we all play guitar, but we've never been overseas to play a gig. What was it like, your first plane ride over? What was it like?
I'll never forget, ever in my whole life, my first trip over there. I was terrified. In my mind, I had all these visions of like super liberal, laid back Europe. Not liberal like in the sense I mean, but like I thought like you would have to pee in an open thing in the street. Like, I don't know why I thought that, but I thought like you'd have to pee, and that like
you go bathroom over there.
Yeah, you pee there. Let me see
over there.
American junk. Your small teeny junk. But then like And then like I thought I was going to get lost and like people wouldn't speak my language. It was going to be like Home Alone, and I was going to be like, what the fuck? And then I remember we landed, and the guy picked us up, and we'd never met him, and he was like this crazy Pierce guy, and we were like, oh my god! So we got into his
gonna die.
van. Yeah, we got into his fucked up van, and we drove through. I think he picked us up in Amsterdam, and I'm looking at all this crazy stuff, and I was just like, this is like I feel so far from home, like. This is way outside of Alexis Road territory. And then I remember the first gig we played that night was he had a big debut kickoff show at the Paradiso. And so we played the Paradiso, and I don't know why I remember this, but the DJ, right as we were getting on stage, was playing Ian Dury and the Blockheads, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. Yeah. So every time I hear that song, which I love that song, I always think of that first step onto the first stage ever in Europe, of which there's probably been 700 since then. But yeah, and then
you can recall that was so well.
Trip there, his little weird apartment was super what I envisioned Europe to look like, and they had those poop shelf toilets that, like, if you take a dump, it sits right there under you, and then you have like there's no water in it. So we're just like, this is terrible. And the food was strange. And
look at the terror that you have wrought.
The poo.
It's like shitting in a fucking like dresser drawer.
Oh, it's terrible. It's the worst. That's what it's like. And it's sort of like they're punishing you, like, look at you did, you pig.
And that is concentrated sin coming out of your ass.
So our first couple gigs, I was like, what is, like, there would be signs that say like no poop shelf, like some American bands had written on there with like, I hate you kind of thing. We didn't know what the hell that meant until I got in there. I'm like, oh. Yeah.
I almost wish this could have been a 2-part series, because we could cover so much freaking ground. So I have to say send accolades, just because seeing a guy sing guys, because like I said, I knew Brad since I was a little kid, I guess, but playing stages where that are just tons of people. I mean, as far as your eye can see, just getting down. I mean, it's so activating, and it's so like, man, I gotta try to do something like that, and I really got to give you kudos for all of that. I mean, it's most bands in Toledo, there's very few that really got out and we had Todd Evans on not too long ago, and he's still killing it. He's one of our favorite people.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I appreciate that. That's nice. Thanks.
I mean, it's truly amazing, and I hope that. I wish there was more of that now. Unfortunately, it seems like music doesn't have the same, gusto as it used to. It's like almost commonplace. You can walk somewhere and just hear music, and there's bands and movies. And
I'll be interested to see how many bands survive the rest of the pandemic. I really will, because I think that I've already lost 2.
I mean, let's just say T-shirt sales are down.
Yeah, T-shirt sales are very, very, very down. They're sub-4.
Did you guys have to have a merch program for Five Horse when you went overseas? Is that a nightmare?
Oh, you got it. I mean, we always take a merch guy with us. You have to. That's how you make. That's the only way you can make money and survive, is to sell your shit. Because, like, we'll play a couple big festivals that'll pay really well, but then the rest of that week, you're making okay money, but you're paying for a van and a tour guy and a tour manager and hotels. Because we did a first tour of like private accommodations, meaning you're crashing on people's floors. We're like, nope. So we demanded hotels, even if they were shitty, just so we could actually sleep and hang out. And so yeah, we always took a merch guy. And when we first started touring, it was every country had a different denomination. So it was like, there was like pounds and marks and like dollars. And I mean, it was
Pre-Euro.
All the Scandinavian money was different. So we'd come home with these bags of, and a lot of it was coins because no one had bills. So we'd have all
What
this
am I going to
crazy-
do with this?
Right. And some of the banks would try to fuck us over and be like, no coins. And we're like, really? Because that's all they have.
All right.
So we'd come back with 20 different countries worth of weird money and have to take it to a bank. And yeah, but it's the only way to survive is to sell shirts. And vinyl later became our number one thing to keep us alive.
That's awesome. Should we, the fun thing about you is you have so many different facets. I suppose we should try to cover TV production next, just because you run a pretty notable, successful, award-winning, as far as I know, right?
Almost. You almost got me an Emmy, but you guys, I didn't. I got nominated for my Reverend story, but
all right, well, nominated then. How do you go from rocker, touring Europe, selling T-shirts, signing titties, and then going to TV production?
Well, after Five Horse, I went on the road with a band called Clutch for a couple years.
Clutch, never
and
heard
I lived
of
in a tour. Yeah, and
just kidding.
I lived in a tour bus, and it was great, and I love those guys. But I came home from that tour, those couple years of tours with Clutch, and I'm like, I can't get back in the van right now. I'm not in that headspace. I'm in the tour bus headspace.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go back to college. So I got a degree. I kind of dicked around and figured out what I wanted to do, which I realized was video production.
Okay.
And I kind of stayed with it and then got a degree. And then I got a job working for. I bought the handy cam and started going. But
we call it the Andy cam.
It is the Andy cam.
The Andy
tape
cam
it to my head, and it just follows me around. Yeah.
And so I got into doing editing and shooting and stuff, and then I tried to find a job. I found a couple jobs doing stuff, but then I got this job at shooting sports at BCSN.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started this mysterious arts network, and they were like, "Hey, we have this music show. We heard you're in a band. Do you want like a TV show? You want
it's yours?"
That? And I said, "Yes, I would love to do that. What's it all about?" And they're like, "It's called Rise Up, and we don't know what the hell else it is. That's it. You have to make it up." So I'm like, "Okay,
have to call it Rise Up."
Yeah, and I said, "Can we change the name because it sounds like a morning show or like some religious show?" And they're like, "Nope, we got to keep it. That's what our producer wants." I said, "All right."
Okay.
So I kind of made up everything on the fly. Like I made up okay, I have 1 million friends that are in bands, so they'll all be on my show, and I'll never run out of friends to be in bands. And then the first story I did was Reverend, the Reverend story, where I came and I talked to Ken and said, I want to come and do a story with you guys and just do this is going to be the template for the show. Mm-hmm. And he's like, cool, do it. And then it got nominated for an Emmy. And then I'm like, fuck, now it's the bar is this high and it just started.
You seriously walked through the front door and peaked immediately.
Yeah. People might not know this, especially audio people, but Andy used to for many years, and Zach and I do work for Reverend Guitars, and that's where this is coming from. So yeah, this is what it is.
Hey, and through that, Eric was nice enough to put my band on.
Yes,
on there, two of my bands actually.
Yep.
On there.
And I ran Ward's video.
Yep. He's done a lot of good for a lot of the local scene. That's for sure. Bringing it back home.
It's good because it's I have so many. I know this is such a corny thing to say, but I have so many crazy talented friends, and they're all willing to be on my show because they're like, sure, why not? Okay, it's you. So I try to handle it with as much grace, and I want to make sure that if they watch it, they can show it to their mom and be like, check it out. I want it to, everything should
That's
look
the opposite of this show.
Yes. Yes. You do not want to show this.
Yeah.
My mom would love to show.
Please understand that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But why are they swearing so much? God damn it. But yeah, so I just try to make sure that everyone that I have on, I try to treat it this is important. And it's worked out well, man. I mean, there's just so many stories to tell in this town, and that's pretty much how.
How about
how it happened.
where can people find the Rise Up series? Is it just on YouTube? Because I know the actual page on the website doesn't really have a list.
We're in the middle of rebuilding the website.
Okay.
But basically, I mean, we only like the network is Buckeye Community Arts Network. Most of the stuff, BCAN, most of the stuff is, I would say, like between all the shows, we kind of do what are called packages, which are like small stories. And then those are all kind of like scattered all over our YouTube page. So if you ever go to the BCAN Arts YouTube page, there's tons of stuff up there.
Okay.
All right.
Or you just do or Rise Up BCAN, you'll find it.
And it is so well done, and there are so many deserving. Here, the thing of it is we have the opportunity, at least with Reverend, I get to travel a lot of different cities, Nashville, New York, Los Angeles, so on and so forth. And there are just great music everywhere. And I did a deep dive of just our local area bands. And what I came to find was that if there was a radio station that just played music within like a 35 going into BG 45-minute radius of this town, you would never need to have anything that you would deem popular. You would never need it. There is such great stuff.
There's a great breadth of talent for sure.
Andy's bands.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say.
Oh no, I believe he was saying something nice about me. Please go ahead.
Except for Andy's bands.
But I mean, and the thing about it, it's weird. It's like this town. There's something very odd about this town. It's like it's slightly magical. And like people come here and they're like, what is it with this town? It's kind of a little bit different. It's kind of rad.
It's magical like an episode of Stranger Things.
Very 80s. Exactly. And but like there's like tons of good jazz guys, and there's like soul people, and there's like hip hop people and rockers and alt rockers and blues dudes, and it's
one
really
family.
packed full of stuff.
Do you remember when they used to call, and I don't know if my buddy coined this phrase, but this was a thing. They called us the second Seattle for a little while.
Oh yeah, because like Newsweek or Time mentioned us like a short list of hot cities. Yeah,
we were like supposed to be the second Seattle, and the funny part is that even though the world may have moved on, we still have.
We were the second Seattle without the flannels.
Yeah, we don't know any of that shit.
But I mean, there's so many weird like confluential like things that have happened or come out of this town. The most important jazz piano player in history is from Toledo. The most important, women's rights person is from Toledo. I mean, like there's like so many, I don't know. It's just a weird place. A lot of things happen.
It's very influential.
Which jazz pianist are you referring to though? Just out of curiosity.
Art Tatum.
Okay. So I mean, only because, there's actually a couple that come to mind just because we had Rusty's for so long. You know what I mean?
So like Claude, like Claude Black, another.
Yeah.
But like Art Tatum is like if you ask anyone on earth
in
who like
Paris,
jazz,
France, who Art Tatum is, they're going to know exactly.
They'll be like, "Oh shit!" And I'll be like, "Well, his house is literally like there. It's where he grew up."
Right. Well, that's man. That is amazing, and you're doing the good work here, promoting folks like Andrew Ellis, the Zimmerman twins. The Zimmerman twins one was one of my favorites. I liked Andy's one because they were in. You shot in Andy's studio with I think Trouble Giant, and you kind of got to believe it or not. Andy's kind of lucky because they actually have a place where their band, has a space to be creative.
It is a very
so great.
Not too many people get that. I mean,
no.
Sometimes when we shoot stuff, like my crew is really good at like vibing out and figuring out what's cool about what we're shooting.
Yes.
And so that particular one and that Trouble Giant one really felt like we were on to something, because I know I've known all you guys forever. So it was like, but it felt like bringing like Matt and Jeff with me, my camera guys, that it felt really like we were on to something that was going to be a little more than just like a band bio, but also was going to be a band bio. You know what I mean? So it it's one of
And
those
those dudes,
special stories I could tell was going to be good, and it's still
all those
great.
dudes jive. Yeah, they all jive so well. They immediately we actually I think we got all of our stuff done, and you guys hung out for a little while afterwards, which we were, hey, cool.
You guys did like a bunch of police songs, and I was like singing police songs and drinking beer. Yeah, it was great, man. It was fun.
Good time. Yeah.
So what would you say to newer music groups to take their music or their business to the next level? That I mean, we touched about a few things, but it seems to me like I guess it's kind of like recapping a little bit, but the music industry is super difficult. I mean, this little area is where I record almost all of my albums by myself, and then I go to Chuck Mock's studio and he does the drums, and you know what I mean? It's so amazingly diverse where you don't have to book a studio for Friday and Saturday and go to Audio Matrix or whatever with Chris. Yeah. But because of that, there's a lot of stuff out there. So how does somebody try to take their music to the next level from your view?
I mean, I think it's still always going to come down to, storytelling, whether even musically storytelling. I mean, it's going to be, you're going to have to be able to write a good song. That's why, what's her name? The green-haired girl that does all her stuff in her basement. I can't think of her name. I'm blanking on her, but biggest pop chick in the world.
Billie Eilish.
Yeah,
Irish.
Billie Eilish. Like
Eilish.
Yeah, it has she's got like these hooks and great. I mean, you have to be able to write something for the most part of note. Now, sometimes there's just trash that's out there that is just there. I mean, it sucks, but that's been the truth through all of,
there's always going to be
history.
shitty music, just like there's always going to be awesome music.
I would like to say my one piece of advice for that person out there that has a band that's, getting going or whatnot, or even, playing a couple shows. I have found that if you hire a professional photographer, that could be one of the greatest things that could ever happen to you. And it might cost you, $100, $150 a night. But if you have somebody that has good equipment and you instruct them, say, this is what I want. I'm like, one of the biggest the things that I say that photographers have a problem with is they always want to just take pictures of the band. But I always say, no, I want the energy of the actual room. You know what I mean? I want the fun that's happening. I don't want it just on me.
So one of the stories that we did, we went to Third Man Records,
Yeah, I watched that one. Yeah.
And so that one I interviewed my friend Todd Albright, who's from Toledo and is on Third Man. And so that night when we were done doing the interview, they're like, hey, Jack and Brendan are going to do a surprise secret show in the store tonight for like fan, like Third Man fans only. Do you guys want to hang out and stay? So we're like, of course, yes. So we did.
Yeah.
So when the time came for the show, there's only 150, 200 people in there. So, and this is before COVID or anything. This was like earlier in the year. It was just a very comfortable environment. They took everybody's phones. They took everybody's watches, no recording devices.
Wow.
Sold them to the person next door.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. They put them in a little bag, and then they keep them, and you have to go get it. But they control the entire thing. They have a photographer there, a videographer, and an audio guy. And anything that came out of that thing, and he's done this, Jack's done this like in arenas as well, is all controlled by him. There's every photograph that comes out of it, every inch of video, every sound is all approved by them and gets out there, rather than some people think it's the opposite. They just want everyone to throw out a phone
Free content
video
providers. Yeah.
That was exactly what happened, because we there's a couple guys in Tenacious D, not to circle back, but they're Reverend guys that play our stuff. So we got to go up, or at least I got to go up and go to the show in Detroit last year, I think it was. And Jack Black never let anybody take a photograph. He always had the phone, and he knew exactly the angle that he wanted, and it was all controlled by him. And he was one of the nicest people I've ever met, but he controlled that media. It's kind of what you're saying. And that's important. And that's even circling back to hiring a photographer. You have to control that narrative.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't want mom, you know, with her iPhone 4S, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and even with like the 5/4 stuff, like we had Mark Dancy do every album cover, you know, so all the album covers had like a thing,
right?
And he's the guy who did like Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden, did all the Big Chief stuff.
Yep.
Did the St. Andrews logo, and he had this magazine called Motor Booty back in the day that I used to contribute to, but we had Mark do every album cover because it's like that way when you look at all of our albums. They're all going to look, you know, they're all going to have like a look, you know. So we kind of didn't want it just to be like each one was sort of a
branding.
Different thing. We all wanted kind of like a big collection at the end, you know.
Yeah.
If you
absolutely.
put them together, all the spines make a picture.
Do you
like my kid posters?
I have a few more questions for you, but one of the last questions is, do you view your albums as like journal entries in a way?
Well, it's weird. It's like I used to things kind of changed a little bit. I used to like always try to be like, there's always this kind of like fine line of like sort of acting like some kind of like maniacal preacher or like down blues guy or whatever, and then mix it with like stuff that really happened in my life. And then slowly but surely it's just become kind of me barfing out what has happened in my life. You know what I mean? I'm just finding cooler ways to say what I'm really trying to say, as opposed to like trying to dress it up in like these fantastical, you know, like Mississippi King, you know, like stories. It became more of me just talking about like what it's like to get hammered and walk down the street, or how sad I am that that lady left me, or, you know, things like that. So I kind of brought in I think Brad does his own thing. He'd have to speak for himself, but I brought in my tent a little bit to just try to take about half the words out and ideas out of it. And whatever's left is probably going to be really good for a 3-minute song.
Yeah. So, and to be fair, Brad sings too, you know, he contributes, of course.
Oh yeah. He wrote a lot of the lyrics for the album I'm the most proud of is, The Taking of Blackheart, which that album Brad and I wrote together. Like we sat in our rehearsal spot and locked ourselves in and both wrote the lyrics and the melodies to like every song, except for the one Rob and Lander sang on.
And that's a huge key for people out there is, you know, collaboration. More minds is better than just one. It just is.
But normally we don't do it that way. Normally it's like, what do you think about this? Okay, I'll come back. And then I go to my end of the world and he goes to his, and we come back, we meet in the studio and figure it out. But like this one, he and I just brain melded in that one. I don't know why we did, or why we don't do it as much.
Do you have any questions before the last couple final thoughts and questions for Eric? Do you have anything you want to?
Yeah,
am I putting you on the spot?
Yeah, no. I always struggle with this myself. Where do you derive your inspiration to actually come up with anything that in your own mind that you believe to be original? Because every time I think that I come up with something that's somewhat like, oh, I made this up. I like, oh shit, I'm stealing this from that. I'm stealing that from this. Like, how do you come up with something original, you know, and how with the writing process behind that?
Well,
like, because I'm always sitting here in this fucking studio, and I'm like, oh shit, it's already been done. It's already been done. Oh, it's this, and I'm like, fuck it, and I always end up walking away like frustrated.
I think the best thing to do is just get over that, because you're going to end up stepping on someone else's shit probably. I mean, Led Zeppelin are all just blues songs. The Beatles' first 5 albums are all pretty much just ripoffs of the Everly Brothers or whatever. I mean, you know, that's simplifying it. I just think you just have to not worry about it and do your, you know, you'll add your voice to it however you will, whether it's your actual voice or whether you and your collaborators come up with a weird new chord progression or whatever. But
be a
for
conduit.
the most part, things are so simple. And Yeah. I mean, things, love, hate, like chemical dependence, God, devil, like there's all these like basic tropes that really are kind of good ways to at least hang a song on,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess there's only so many stories.
And then I always try to like, yeah, well, I mean, what I always end up finding is like somebody will say something and it'll click and I'll be like, that's what a great turn of phrase. Like we have a song called Spillin' Fire. And that was like, I was downstairs at the underground at downtown Toledo at the underground of the
Asylum.
And we were
Missed that place.
well in our cups, and some dudes, they had candles lit, which you would never do now, but they had candles lit. Some dude bumped into a candle and it spilled all over somebody. And they're like, dude, you're spilling fire on me. And I was like, like,
there you go.
Like that just stuck in my head. And I changed the meaning of it and took it into some other thing. But yeah. And so a lot of times things that you aren't looking for will just pop in there. And it can be weird that you've never heard before. But I don't know, just kind of keep your eyes open and ears open.
That's what happens when you have your free subway, down at the underground.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, do you have anything before?
I am really glad you were able to get on the show. I think we should probably schedule a second one because I think more oddball tour stories would
I got lots of them. I mean, I did lots of crazy stuff we haven't talked about yet.
All right. So I have, believe it or not, we have a little show and tell here. I have 2 photographs that need a little bit more explanation. So let's start with one.
Yep.
We have to describe this for the audio viewer, though.
Okay, so you're looking at a tour photo that was taken by a really super famous photographer.
Really?
His name's Martin. I can't think of his last name. But he was the guy who took all the first pictures of U2 and all those tour pictures of them. Huh. He took all the pictures of the Police back when they first started.
Nice.
Wow. And I wrote an article for this magazine called MPH, which is now defunct. I have it around here somewhere. But so I wrote this article about being in a tour bus. And so they came and did a story and they sent this photographer out. So what you're looking at this is in London, outside of I think it's in London, outside of the underground or the underworld where we played. So that's me hanging out of the tour bus. There's Steve with long hair, Brad Coffin with the Stooges Wax Museum t-shirt on. And drumming on that tour was John Paul from Clutch. So we stole John Paul for that tour. And that guy, Martin, damn, I can't remember his name, but he took, like, if I showed you like pictures that he took of like Echo and the Bunnymen, you'd be like, that guy,
Wow.
Iconic imagery.
And they sent him only because I wrote this thing for a magazine. Like we normally would have never landed that dude, but he got paid. So
that's awesome.
Hell yeah,
All right.
I'm sure he did.
If I have one more photograph, and this is a doozy. All right, here we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, baby.
Was this Teen Magazine? What was this?
This is Rolling Stone.
Holy shit.
So Rolling Stone magazine, I'll make this as quick as I can.
Oh no, take your time.
The Metallica started their tour, the And Justice for All tour. A lot of people don't know this. They started their tour in Toledo.
Really?
And the reason they started in Toledo was because they could rent the sports arena for like a week for basically nothing.
Practice.
And practice.
No way.
So they were hanging out for a week in Toledo, just fucking around, and mostly the crew. But so Andy from the Necros was downtown and he overheard these guys talking about blah, 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 and James needs this or whatever. And I got to run to this guitar. Anybody know where a guitar store is? And Andy was like, yeah, I do. What's going on? He's like, oh, I'm working with this band. They're, at the arena, the Enormi Dome or whatever. And he's like, yeah, it's Metallica. And it happens to be that Metallica are massive Necros fans. They're like huge Necros and always have been huge Necros fans. So Andy says, hey, tell those guys that the Necros are here and here's my number. So, I mean, literally 2 hours later, like Hetfield calls Andy and he's like, dude, what's up? Come to the show. So we went to see them in Toledo and the And Justice for All show. And we went backstage and we acted like crazy maniacs, and it was super fun. Then they're like, play in Cleveland tomorrow. Come to that. So I said, okay. So we all go to Cleveland the next day at another place that's not there anymore, the whatever arena that's gone now, where the Cavs used to play. But and we went back to the stage and we're dicking around and acting loud and making those guys laugh, and I saw the meanest thing I ever saw anyone do to anyone. There, say about that someday. It's terrible.
Hold on.
Kirk Hammett said the meanest thing anyone I've ever seen.
Time out. You're going to have to repeat that because the audio and the video froze a little bit.
It sounds serious.
No, so we were backstage in Cleveland, and I just incidentally, as a side note, I saw Kirk Hammett do the meanest thing to anyone that I'd ever seen anyone do to anyone. But that's not. So me and like Hetfield and Lar. Oh, which by the way, I took those guys when they're in Toledo. I took them to Roxanne's.
Really?
And we went to Roxanne's. Yep. And Kirk Hammett, the band that was playing was some cover band, and they did a smart ass version of Seek and Destroy. And Kirk Hammett fucked the singer's girlfriend that night. Yeah. That's the truth.
He sought and destroyed.
Yes, but so this dude, so some guy got backstage like he won a prize, and he was like, so he goes up to Kirk Hammett and he's like, he was very nice and really nervous, and he was surrounded by all of us. We're just standing around talking shit, talking about the Misfits or whatever, and Necros stuff or whatever. And this guy comes up and he's like, Mr. Hammett, I just want to say you're my favorite band, and I love you, and I just love your playing, and blah, 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 and just all got really into it. And Kirk Hammett just goes, dude, your mouthwash ain't cutting it. And he just turned around and left.
Oh,
it was such a dick thing.
And
like, I mean, this guy was like, this guy went, he melted like a candle, I mean, it was, I felt so bad for the dude because he was like surrounded by everyone. And of course, everyone's like, and the guy was just like, I mean, boom. And it was so mean. And he just was, man, it was a dick
Young
move.
Eric Trump learned his lesson early in life.
It was tough. So anyway, so we're running around backstage.
You killed your fan.
This guy comes up to me and he goes, you and you and you. And we're like, well, we're getting kicked out. And they dragged us back to the back of the backstage. Like there's another room. And James Hetfield's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, oh, well, you're going to be in Rolling Stone magazine. And it was their first feature story. They weren't even on the cover. It was just their name. It was the cover with
they're not good enough.
What do you call it? Mad Max guy.
George Miller?
No, the
Mel
actor.
Gibson.
Mel Gibson was on the cover for, I think it was like when Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome came out, and it was like, and basically like some new band, Metallica. So there was like a 2-page spread on them, and I opened it up, and there I was. And my mom went and bought like 50 copies and gave everybody.
Cool. I mean, I told you I'd make it a Rolling Stone, Mom.
Yeah, the picture's only that big, but it was still pretty great. Yeah. It looks like I'm yelling in Hetfield's ear. They're just like, everybody shout. So I was like, yay.
All right. So now we know how really Eric got all of his gigs. His mom, like, hey, I need another one of those Rolling Stones if you don't mind.
I got the special EO episode and the edition. Yeah. But yeah, that was cool. And then those guys were very kind and, nice to us. And they, were interested in what we were doing, but that was kind of where it ended. And then I know that people have talked to them, like they've talked to Necros guys since then and stuff, but that was kind of the big, my weekend with Metallica kind of thing. So.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is
good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Well, I tell you what, we've exceeded our 1 hour show by 13 minutes and 51 seconds. So we had to hats off to you.
World record.
Quickly, if you made it this far, then you probably want to know this information. So up on the screen, we have fivehorsejohnson.com, FIVEHORSEJOHNSON.com for the audio people. Check them out. And the one thing that we always try to encourage, and we hope it happens at least a few times, is if you find a song or an album, please, if you dig it, purchase it or add it to your Spotify playlist and things like that. There's easy little things.
Small Stone Records, you can find it there. That's smallstone.com.
Okay. And where are they based out of? Because
Detroit.
Detroit. Okay. So, folks, it's one of those things you literally support art. And the reason why I really like to emphasize that is because Eric actually supports other people's art as well, with filming and doing little small documentaries. And
John.
Yeah, there is nothing. I hope that you get the proper accolades that you deserve to really putting a spotlight on people that, like Andy and many others that,
otherwise wouldn't care.
No, it wasn't that, but we've all spent like hours and so much money to making music, and none of us are planning on trying to get rich off the goddamn shit,
No.
Yeah.
But to have somebody acknowledge the fact that you exist, right, Andy? And
doing it classy. It's not some seedy motel bathroom or a back room or whatever with like a crappy camera or whatever.
Or the gifts by James Addiction.
I tried to take the Madonna route and it didn't work for me.
Yeah. But Eric, we really truly appreciate and love you for the whole and being a beacon of.
Be a beacon.
Yeah, a beacon of like the people can hopefully strive to be. We've got a lot of young guys that are coming up that, man, I really hope this reaches and they can, for me, it's always like feeling that fire, like, fuck this shit. I'm going to record tonight and wrap this up. And the one thing I always found was interesting, and I'm trying to remember who the hell said it, is every song is a hit song until you release it. Oh man, this is like fucking the shit.
Believe it when this thing hits.
Can you believe what we just did? This is amazing. Yeah.
I remember you release it. It's like
remember listening to stuff right directly off the board on the way back from recording for the first time and being like, yeah, this is gonna be fucking. If I listen to it now, I'm like, oh my god.
Like I'm sure the Imagine Dragons thought that song, the Thunder and the Lightning, was just gonna fucking dominate the world, but it's like something happened.
It did.
I guess it kind of did.
My fucking kids sing it. Yeah,
but there's also a lot of people that like hate it with a passion, and it's just like
that's why there's a shit.
Like, I used to be a fan into the song, and I'm like, it's like so weird that like
I have a hard time imagining that Imagine Dragons had.
It's like an oxymoron, by the way.
Yeah, were they like the punk rock band that everybody's like, but they were a really cool punk rock band before they were Imagine Dragons? No, man.
No, that was Google Dolls.
But I know, but that seems to be like the thing. Dude, they used to be fucking awesome.
Or REM, or a number of different people that fucking just rocked it out with their balls out. And so they made some hit songs, whatever. Yeah. Five Horse had Mississippi King, and they, got their fame right.
Yes, I'm in my palatial estate as we speak.
Look at my man's
residuals from and mechanicals.
He's like, and if anybody that's listening to this show and doesn't see the video, Eric has a map on his wall. And I'm assuming that's proving your domination of not only Toledo, Ohio,
most of Eastern Europe.
I bought this at a church rummage sale, and it's funny. The reason I like this map the most is because it's a European airline, some defunct airline map.
Oh,
it's got a bunch of lines. But what's funny is it's like Europe's in the middle. They always tell you, like, if you buy an American map. But instead of that, it's got America over here and America over here.
Yeah, a little bit of both. You're in America sandwich.
That's a very ocean-centric map right there. They really want to give you both.
So much cubic feet of water.
Dare I say risky?
Well, I want to say to you guys, though, thanks for having me on. And I love your show, and I'm a fan of your show because right now this is exactly what people need is your kind of buffoonery / expertise. So you guys are actually,
and that's what we are.
you guys are actually, I know you well. I know you're all very talented guys. You're all really good at what you do. And this is kind of like a great outlet, but it's such a great time to just jump in and hang out with you guys for like an hour or two.
Yes.
Listening to whoever's talking. Some people on your show, I don't even know who the hell they are. And I just end up listening to the whole thing or watching the whole thing. Some people like that Reeves Gabrels thing was mind blowing, fascinating. And that's when people say stuff like, anyway, so Bowie calls me up and he says, blah, blah, like that's awesome. Like it's so great. But you guys do it really well. And it's really fun. And it's like, I'm so thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming out, man. Thanks for coming out.
We'll have to have you back on next year for sure. Having said that, we are way overboard. So everybody, we hope to see you next week and have a great week. Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.